I'm a professional hiker. I like to hike in different areas and explore nature when I have the chance during the weekend. That week, I was hiking the main section of the Appalachian Trail. Frankly, I wasn't on good terms with my boss. This hike would help me clear my head. I'm 28 years old, and the main section was going to be the most difficult hike I have ever done. I was very excited for it. There are views and challenging climbing areas that every hiker would want to see. My goal in Maine was to hike a little, take in the breathtaking views of the area, and get away from work stress. The biggest reason I chose this area was because it was peaceful. I like to hike alone. That's why the routes I choose are usually peaceful. Hiking trails with lots of people are not my favorite places. I chose the 100-mile wilderness area. The reason I chose this area is because it is an isolated and peaceful forest area. I found a suitable place in Monson and parked my car. I put my pack on my back. I had to continue on foot to reach the 100-mile wilderness area. After a long walk, I reached the area. I had planned my start and finish points in advance. I started walking. I know that walking alone in such areas is dangerous. Walking on routes with many people does not excite me. Although there is a risk of getting lost, I like to explore the areas where I sometimes stray from my route. My destination was Barren Mountain, and this mountain was about 6 miles away. The terrain conditions were quite difficult. After about an hour of walking, I could only walk 2 miles. The weather suddenly turned bad. It started to rain. I took my raincoat out of my bag. Although the situation bothered me, I had to walk like this until the rain stopped. I continued on my route. When I was halfway through the walk, I noticed a sound coming from behind me, about 50 yards away. The sound I heard sounded like footsteps. Whenever I moved, I heard that sound. But whenever I stopped, the sound stopped. I did not want to turn around and look back. Frankly, I was scared. I started walking quickly. I could hear the footsteps of what was following me. The sun was about to set and the rain was still falling. The gloomy atmosphere of the forest increased my fear even more. My phone had no signal. Whatever was following me, I could no longer hear its footsteps. I turned and looked back. I could not see anything, but the thing following me could be hiding behind any tree. After walking for about half an hour, I reached Barren Mountain. My phone signal had come. I did not care about the view I had been dreaming of for months. I called the police immediately. I told them my location and route. I also mentioned that I might be being followed. Help was on the way, but there was still great danger. I had lost 2 hours due to the difficult conditions on my route. I had to reach my vehicle or the police before it got dark. I could not stop and wait in that deserted place. I took a risk. I went back to the forest, but I could not go back the same way. I had to go off route. After walking a little on the mountainside, I entered the forest from a different point. I had to be very careful, and the thing following me could still be behind me. Since it was my first time in an area, I did not know the forest and the surroundings. I walked for about 45 minutes. Everything seemed fine. There was no sound or anything strange. I estimated I had about 30 minutes left to get out of the forest. I was walking quickly. Suddenly, I heard a voice from my right. I looked out of the corner of my eye but couldn't see anything. A few minutes later, I heard a voice right behind me. I turned and looked. I didn't know what to do at that moment because of fear. I noticed a person hiding behind the trees. I started to run slowly. My heart was beating like it was going to jump out of my chest. I've already experienced enough scary events. When I saw that person hiding behind the trees, I panicked. There was a hill on my left. I immediately went down the hill. My goal was to make them lose my track. I checked my surroundings every now and then. About 5 minutes later, I heard a voice coming from behind me again. When I turned around, I saw a shadow moving in the forest. I started running fast. I had to get out of the forest as soon as possible. I was out of breath, but I didn't care. I kept hearing voices coming from behind me as I ran. It was obvious that I was being followed. I couldn't help but think about what this maniac wanted from me. The voices were getting closer. I was afraid to look behind me. I gave in to my instincts. I looked back out of the corner of my eye. I saw a person in a black suit running towards me. I kept running. I was almost out of the forest. This experience was the scariest thing I've ever experienced in my life. I was fighting for my life. I couldn't slow down. When I got to the exit of the forest, I saw the police. I started running with all my strength, shouting at the police. When I reached the police, I couldn't speak because I was tired. I just pointed behind me with my finger. When I turned around and looked, there was no one there. The police officer dropped me off at my car. In the meantime, I gave him all the information about the incident. According to the police, there was a high probability that the person I encountered was a drug addict. They usually prefer such deserted areas. I probably encountered an addict. I can't forget this terrifying experience. After that incident, I don't go walking alone because we can't know what people's intentions are. I realized that I need to be more careful now. I've been hiking as an amateur for years. I can say that I enjoy each hike I take. I've been to more than half of the hiking trails and national parks in America. I've encountered different beauties in each of them, and I've fully enjoyed nature. However, I've realized that I've lost my old excitement. For this reason, I choose places that are far from people, where there is a risk of getting lost, and that are intertwined with wild nature. It may sound a little crazy, but I really enjoy hiking in places I do not know where I risk getting lost. At least it was until that terrible incident I will tell you about. I did not bring a GPS with me to add excitement to my hikes. Perhaps this was the biggest mistake I've ever made. I would tie red ribbons to the trees on my hiking route and collect them one by one on my way back so as not to lose my way. In this way, I minimized the risk of getting lost. In fact, this method was quite safe. It minimized the risk of getting lost. This time, a very challenging hike awaited me. I was going to hike in the Gila Wilderness region in New Mexico. The Gila Wilderness is famous for its vast and deserted areas. This situation excited me a lot. Even for those who have been hiking for many years, this area was very dangerous. If you don't know, these areas are usually places where there are very few people and are in the middle of the wilderness. Therefore, it is very important to be prepared for everything and take safety precautions. I knew that this hike I was going to do would be very dangerous, but that wasn't enough reason to stop me. I expected to meet no one in this forest, and that was what I wanted, to be alone and enjoy nature. I live in New Mexico, so it wasn't very difficult for me to reach the area. I entered the forest around 10 o'clock in the morning. I was planning to finish my hike before the sun set. I know how dangerous the area is. The fact that I've been hiking for many years and haven't chosen this area is the biggest proof of this. My first thoughts about the forest were that it was really scary. There were wildlife areas in the forest. Bird sounds coming from everywhere. The sounds the trees make due to the wind and various animal sounds. This was the only hike I've done so far where I felt like I was one with nature. I felt like I was in the heart of nature. To be honest, I've never been this close to nature. To be more precise, I thought I was enjoying nature on my walks until I came to this forest. But I was wrong. This was what being truly close to nature was. I tied my red ribbons to the tree branches and started my walk. I could feel the eerie atmosphere of the forest down to my bones. I thought I would encounter a squirrel or another animal on this walk. As I continued my walk, I realized that I might be wrong about this. I will make a confession to you. Being close to the forest and wild nature had started to scare me. I had chosen this area so that I would not encounter people. I liked being alone. It had been half an hour since I started walking. To be honest, I wanted to meet someone now. Maybe it was a mistake to go on this walk alone. You can understand from here that I was starting to feel scared. The animal sounds I heard in the forest had stopped. Only the sound of nature was there. Maybe it was the most peaceful moment I had felt since I first stepped into the forest. However, this feeling did not last long. Suddenly, I heard a voice that would show me how right I was to be afraid. The sound was like the roar of a wild animal. I couldn't figure out what this sound was. Maybe being in the wild made me paranoid. It was a sound that was hard to describe. Oh, it was as if all the sounds in the forest had stopped for a moment. I could only hear that sound. I stopped and listened to it. I tried to figure out where the sound was coming from. I had never heard a sound like this before. It could have been an animal caught in a trap, but the area was protected under the Wildlife Protection Act, so it didn't make sense. I thought it could be an injured animal, but deep down, I knew it was a lie I told to reassure myself. The sound I heard was getting further away from me as I continued walking. This made me feel relieved. When I think about that moment now, I have no idea why I didn't continue walking and leave the forest. In fact, it was logical. I really don't know why I didn't leave the forest at that moment. As I continued walking, I kept thinking about what that sound could be. Hunting was forbidden in the forest, but maybe poachers had injured an animal. It was easiest for me to think that a hunter could actually do something like this. As I continued my walk with these thoughts, I suddenly noticed something. There was an arrow stuck in the trunk of the tree right in front of me. The arrow I saw strengthened the possibility of hunters in the forest. There was something wrong with this nature walk I was on from the beginning, so I decided to turn back. I was returning by collecting the ribbons I had hung on the tree branches. About 15 minutes had passed. I could not find the ribbons I had hung on the tree branches. If I had reached the end of the ribbons, I should have been at the exit of the forest, but I was still in the middle of the forest. I am sure that I hung ribbons on every tree as I proceeded. Not taking a GPS with me was a really big mistake. I had been walking for about an hour, but I could not find the exit of the forest. At that moment, I heard a branch breaking right behind me from inside the forest. I cannot tell you how scared I was at that moment. When I turned around, I noticed a shadow passing between the trees. I sped up my walk. I was really scared. What was that shadow I saw? Or was my mind playing tricks on me? I was trying to find the exit of the forest in fear. Not even 5 minutes had passed when something caught my attention. The ribbons I had hung on a tree branch were hanging. Now I was sure someone was deliberately collecting the ribbons I had hung and wanted me to get lost in the forest. Maybe it wasn't for me to get lost, it was for my life. Maybe it was watching me right now. I started running unconsciously through the forest in fear. I didn't know which way I was going, but I knew something was following me. The only thing on my mind was to survive and get out of the forest. I don't remember running that fast in my life. Even I was surprised at myself. I was very tired. I stopped to rest a little. It was completely stupid not to take my phone with me. At that moment, I heard the sound that I had heard when I first entered the forest, similar to an animal roar again. I started running fast. That sound was echoing in the forest. I could feel it coming from behind me, but whenever I stopped and looked back, I couldn't see anything. The sound echoed so much in the forest that I felt like I was a meter behind me, but I couldn't figure out where the sound was coming from. I ran unconsciously in the forest for 15 minutes. I saw my car at the exit of the forest by pure chance. That day was one of the luckiest days of my life. I really had no idea how to get out of the forest. I was completely lost. But somehow I reached my car. I got in my car and left before the thing that was chasing me, whatever was, caught me. I never went hiking again after that day. It would be more accurate to say I didn't dare. I'm trying to find a logical reason for what I experienced. There was a hunter in that forest. Hunting was forbidden in that area. He noticed me, followed me from a distance for a while, and collected the ribbons I hung so that I wouldn't lose my way. In this way, he gained time to get his prey and get away from the area. I know this explanation doesn't make much sense. It doesn't make sense to me anyway, but that's all I can think of. If you have another idea, please share it with me. I'm open to any suggestions.